Hey friends, I'm here in beautiful Lafayette, Colorado at the Coal Creek Trail. You can see behind me I have this glorious stream and this beautiful cottonwood tree. And I've got my plein air setup right here. Let me tell you guys a little bit about my setup. This is my Yugo tripod and pochade box. This is a size 6x8 pochade box. You can also order the side panels to go along with it, which are so helpful for holding all of your brushes and your water jar. This portion of the box is actually magnetic, which is so nice because for my metal Schmincke pan set, I can just attach it right there and it sticks and it doesn't bump or move too much. You have these little grippers on the pochade box which will hold your panel or paper block. My panel today is a crescent board. You can see the crescent board is a hard panel, kind of like an aqua board, and it's got this cold pressed surface. So we're going to try that out today for the painting. It's important to have a water jar. This is my Faber-Castell collapsible water jar. I'm not going to squeeze it right now because it has water in it. And a spray bottle for wetting my paints. I have a pencil and a flat wash brush for big brush strokes. Let me show you my travel brushes. I have 3 different brands right here. This is the Richardson Gray Matters size 12 round brush. The cool thing about these is you can see they come in these little bullets, and that protects your bristles when you're traveling, and you just pull that out and attach it like that. And same for these. This is my Silver Black Velvet size 8 travel brush. I use this one almost for every painting, and this one is a nice and small. This is a Miller's Pseudo Sable brush. I think this is about a size 4. So those are my brushes today. The Schmincke set actually comes with a brush too, but I hardly ever use it for some reason. And then of course you'll need a rag or paper towel for blotting. So as you can see, the lighting conditions, especially when you have dappled light and trees, can change constantly when you're plein air painting. I like my setup right now because my panel's in the shade and it's really warm today. It's about 85 degrees, but in the shade it's not so bad. So I think we found a good spot here. I'm going to set up my other camera so you guys can see my panel a little better, and we'll get started. To get started, the first thing is to decide on your composition. This can be really tricky when you have all of this overwhelming beauty surrounding you. Just to narrow it down to something 5 by 7 inches, that's all we have here. So looking at this scene, I'm really interested in the angle of the tree and the reflection and the water, the reflection of the sky on the water. I think that's just so beautiful. So it's important to just study it for a little while first. Don't just jump in and paint the first thing you see. Take the time to really plan your composition and make it something beautiful. All right, I'm gonna try to get quite a bit in here. I love the angle of the tree and I love the little rocks behind it, and I love the water and the grass, the color behind it, the sunlight shining through. There's so many elements. But we're gonna have to just try to paint fast and quickly and loosely to capture the essence of the scene. So, first of all, I'm going to decide where the bottom of my tree is gonna go. Might take you a little bit just to get the composition you want. This is really an important part. Make sure you get the sketch right. Have flies landing on me. That's all part of this, isn't it? Okay, there's all these little root clusters here at the base of the tree. Right now we'll just draw that all as one shape, and then the reflection underneath and the shadow of the tree. The flies have found me. Oh no. And I want to get the line of the tree reflected on the water. A lot of the foliage back here we'll want to paint and draw as clusters of shapes. Don't get too specific. You'll be tearing your hair out if you try to get so specific with all these little details. And I do think that color is going to be an important element to this painting. We're going to have to mix up some really nice browns and greens for this. Well, that's all I have here to get started. Let's just jump in. Okay, so I need my water. Spray bottle to wet your paints. Oh, a great blue heron just flew by. How cool. There it goes. All right, so you're gonna find that your paper dries exceedingly fast, especially if it's got sunshine hitting everything. That's just an added element to this whole thing, isn't it? Okay, I'm grabbing my large brush, my size 12 Richardson Gray Matters round brush. So let's just start with the dark shapes. Let's mix up a murky gray and just get some color down. Painting in the shadow shapes that I see on the tree first. Squinting at what I'm seeing in nature. When you're working vertically, of course, your paint will just sort of drip down. Something you just sort of have to embrace about painting upright like this. Can't use too much water, that's for sure. For these areas in light, I'm just gonna leave that completely the white of the paper. No color there. And I will have to go darker eventually, for sure. Now, I really don't necessarily want this to be a hard edge. I want it to all kind of connect right into the reflection. So while that's still wet, I'm going to create this dark shape connecting it. This is the sepia color I'm using. There is a little streak of kind of foam along that edge, but I'm not going to play that up too much because when I squint, it just completely disappears. So that tells me it's not an important light. Ask yourself, what are the most important light and dark shapes to include? What disappears and what can you still see? Don't look too deeply at the details just yet. So really quickly just blocked in that whole shape, and I'm going to take some yellow ochre and start adding other pops of color while I'm at it, showing the streakiness of the water right here. Some interesting light shapes in the water right here. And then I want to get the sky blue color. I'm going to use this Prussian blue, but quite watered down. Paint the sky color right up next to there. There's a busy highway right by us, right over there, so you can hear all the trucks and traffic. I actually see definitely some hints of cool blue in the tree trunks here and in the tree itself. So I'm painting that in. Already the light has faded on my tree. I don't see it quite so prominently anymore, but I'm just going to leave it because that's what I got in my initial first impression. What I'm doing now is darkening the shadows and adding that cool blue. You can hear the blue jays and the airplanes. Definitely not a quiet experience like when you're in your studio. Avoid the temptation to get too detailed. I'm already starting to do that a little bit. Gotta watch it. I'm starting to add some suggestions of the bark texture, but again, trying to keep squinting at what I'm seeing so I don't go too detailed, and I already think I did a little bit. It's okay to cover that up with another wash. I do have black on my palette. I'm going to use it for the deepest, darkest shadows beneath the roots right here. Some of these deeper values we're going to want to save for last, but I think it is helpful to get a few on initially just so you can make better judgments about the rest of your values. I haven't ever painted a scene quite like this, so it's challenging. I'm definitely struggling with what to prioritize. That's all part of it, is just figuring out what to prioritize, what to make important in your painting. And so often, even the most experienced plein air painters have a successful painting half the time, and half the time it's not so successful. So you can't go into this expecting it to be a masterpiece every time. This is a green combo. I used both of my warm and cool greens and then a little bit of brown. I'm using this for this water in the very back of the composition. Mosquitoes. Yeah, they found me. I have to adjust how I hold my brush to get these horizontal brush strokes. And I want, as the water emerges into the light here, to create a ripple effect.
Do you have a blog or something?
I have a YouTube channel. Yeah. Enjoy your day. I'm mixing up a spring green now and just going to create some clusters of plants in the back here. All right, so now's a good time again to squint at your subject and decide what you're going to include, what's important. And for me, it is important to include all this suggestion of foliage back here, and I want to leave some of the dappled light behind it. Just using a quick blotting motion to get those shapes down. And I'm going to grab some more spring green. Just paint that right up to the tree. There's definitely a lot going on in this painting, so quite a challenge. Now this whole background back here is quite dark in value, so let's just do blocks of color. I see a cooler bluish gray. For the rocks back here, we'll paint those in just a cluster using a little more of the ultramarine. Then we can go back in and add the dark details, and that will help it really look like what it is we're seeing. But for now, just get the colors down. Throwing some green back here, carefully painting along that edge with the tree. And then in the background, I'm going to do a really light spring yellow, and we'll want to overlap that with the darker foliage. So just start with that. Go away, mosquito. And then you can add the foliage over the top. All right, I'm going even darker with the shadows under the tree. And we're approaching the stage where I think I need to switch to a smaller brush. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to switch to my Silver Black Velvet size 8 brush. Now that I've got all this color down, I can start adding detail to the tree if I want to. I think I need to add some more color to the water first. So I'm going to take this Venetian red. The reason for this color is to suggest the rocks underneath the surface. And then I'm going to use some ultramarine to suggest the raking light across the water. Pull that out into the light area. Trying to take a complex subject matter and just really simplify it down. And oftentimes you'll find you have to just sort of brush out what you just did to simplify it even further. Trying to capture some of these delicate little ripples in the water. Kind of have to have the right grip on the brush to get those little sideways circular shape. And get some more green mixed in with that. I'm mixing my jungle green and my sepia to get the right combination for this very earthy kind of green in the background. Darkening the water back here. And then I want to capture some of the reflections of those rocks. So I'm carefully leaving some light shapes where the rocks are reflected. This is a shadow shape. And trying to make that a little less murky, a little more specific. I'm going to do that with the reflection here. Just really make it more specific, especially in this shadow, reflecting the shadow that's just up above it. So many bugs. The price you pay for painting by a river. So this is a tricky problem. I'm trying to depict the movement of the water, but also the stability of the shadow shape of the tree. And that's an interesting, difficult challenge. Where you'll really see the movement is in the ripples. And mine need to run more parallel than that. I think that's better. I'm also trying to ever so slightly suggest the rocks on the bottom of the creek bed. And then this shape looks almost like there's light streaking through it, and that's not true, so I'm darkening that all up. For the bark texture, you can just do kind of a blotting motion. See how I'm just kind of moving my brush vertically, not being too specific. What you definitely don't want is for it to create these long lines showing the bark. That doesn't look real. One more big broad wash here for the shadow. Starting to get dark enough. We're continually adjusting our values in the plein air painting. Although I know some artists who are so excellent at just blocking it in right away, but I'm a more inexperienced plein air painter, so all of this practice is just really invaluable for helping. I'm going to add a little bit more greenery. I'm filling in these gaps here because there really isn't any pure white light there. And then I do want to make some of these rock shadow shapes more specific. I'm going to use my black and my sepia to do that. So this was that little reflection that we painted there. Now I'm going to draw the shadow. Too much water is always the enemy. Also, bugs crawling up your leg is an enemy. Starting to paint some specific little branches, grasses. It's not perfect. Obviously, I'm not painting exactly what I'm seeing. I'm just trying to get the impression. So once again, coming back to those rocks, I love painting rocks. It's just light and shadow and shapes. That's all it is. But I'm starting to carve out the shadow shapes with my brush. And the wonderful thing about plein air painting is that you really have so much leeway to making it whatever you want it to be. And if your drawing isn't perfect, no one's gonna know. And so here I'm starting to create these ripples and reflections of those rocks back there. Sometimes to get straight lines I have to turn my brush upside down, adding more streaks of bright green. And the shadowy water over here. It's starting to come together. There's always an ugly phase, and I was definitely a little worried about this one, but we're getting there. Adding some more shadow tone to the tree trunk. Flat wash, lots of water here, but again, not too much water, or it'll all just streak down your painting. The lovely balance you have to draw when you're painting upright. Not a fan of this hard edge, so I'm going to knock that out. So with this crescent board, just like an aqua board too, you can do plenty of scrubbing, modifying edges and adjusting. And along this shadow edge, while it is a decided shadow of the tree, we still need to make it look like there's ripples there so that we're aware of the fact that it's in water. Getting that to look right has been a struggle. As you can see, I'm going over it and over it, trying to get that right. Not sure if I've got it, but we're just gonna keep going. All right, so back to our rocks up here. Create another little shadow shape separating these. This is oddly some of the most specific painting I'm doing. I say oddly because it's not necessarily in the center. It's definitely offset, but I do want the viewer's eye to be drawn here because it's the most interesting part of the painting for me too. So where you put the most detail and spend the most time is generally going to be a focal point in your painting, or the focal point. All right, I need to do some color balancing, so I'm taking some yellow ochre, which I put in the water here, and I'm applying it a little bit in the background as well. As promised, we want this dark background to kind of come up and overlap the streaking light from the background behind that. Ooh, big drip. Now, what to do with this space between the trees? I'm going to try to balance it with what I saw over here. So taking ultramarine and green and a little bit of yellow to create sort of this bluish green to paint the cottonwood leaves, but leaving the light streaking through, just little bits of it here and there. Pulling it down with a little more yellow, mixed in a little more water, doing a gradient from dark to light, and then back to dark again. The value between the two trunks should be almost identical to the trunks themselves. While this is still wet, I'm adding little vertical streaks. Hopefully they will soften out a bit, suggesting foliage back here. All right, this still needs some punch to it. It still needs pops of really, really dark color. So I'm gonna take black once again. And I know I've darkened this so many times already, but we're gonna darken our shadow one more time, while also creating some more bark texture at the bottom of the tree. Big, long, horizontal, flat brush stroke right here. Once again, redefining the edge of that shadow. And then also pulling that paint out while it's still wet to create a ripple's edge. All right, last thing will be to add another shadow on the underside of the tree, doing a little bit of dry brushing. Scumbling motion of the brush. Okay, and then one last thing. I said that already, didn't I? But I'm gonna take a pop of yellow, paint it along highlighted edge of the background right here. And then we need to show a little of that in the reflection, just suggested in the water down here. I think that added a lot of pizzazz, much better. All right, I'm going to stop. I better stop. Resist the temptation to keep picking at your painting. I know it's tempting to do that, but watercolor especially is just going to get overworked and start to look messy. So we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks for watching, guys.